Okay, so we will continue to talk about the trigonometric equations and how to solve the trigonometric equations in this section. Okay, so we want to find all the solutions, solve equations with multiple angles. Okay, solve the quadratic equations in the quadratic form, factoring, identities, even use a calculator. Okay, so what is a trigonometric equation? A trigonometric equation is an equation that contains trigonometric expressions with a variable, such as sine x, sine y, or sine theta. So the values satisfy such an equation are called solutions. So there are trigonometric equations that have no solution, too. Okay, but there are trigonometric equations that have infinitely many solutions too. Okay, so some equations have multiple angles because like sine theta equal to a half. Theta can be 30 degrees or 150 degrees. Think about this. Okay, so now let's solve the equation. So if we have 5 sine x equal to 3 sine x plus square root of 3. Okay, so what should we do? We wanted to isolate the sine x. Yeah, so we have 2. You have 5 minus it will be 2 sine x equal to square root of 3. Sine x equal to square root of 3 or 2. Now, what do we wanted to do? We wanted to solve the sine x, yeah? So sine x equal to square root of 3. So what should we do to solve this? Always remember, okay, so this is sine x is bigger than 0, yeah? Okay, so what should we do to solve this? Always define the quadrant. So quadrant sine is positive. Which quadrant is this angle in? So x can be in quadrant 1 or 2. Okay, so because A, S, T, C, yeah? So this is the first thing. You have to decide which quadrant is this angle in. So the second thing is, what will be the reference angle? So because after you find the quadrant, if you find the right reference angle, then you can find the x, yeah? So what is the reference angle? Sine x equals square root of 3 over 2. So what will be the reference? Reference, sometimes we use x prime, which will be what? What do you want it to say? Pi over 3. Yeah? So quadrant 1, quadrant 2. Yeah? So what happens here? You have quadrant 1, pi over 3. Then, if you know the quadrant, yeah? So in quadrant 1, the angle, it will be pi over 3. In quadrant 2, so what will be the angle? So x will be pi minus pi over 3, then equal 2 pi over 3. Are you with me? Okay, so are we done? So this only find 2 angles, but do you remember you can always go one revolution, another revolution, and go to the counterclockwise, means plus 2n pi, and also plus 2n pi. Why? So because 2 pi is the period, and here n is any integer. So this means n can be equal to -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, Okay, with me. So n is an integer because you have to plus 2 pi multiply with n here. Okay, so this is how you solve this. Okay, so tangent of 2x equal to square root of 3. Okay, so what do we want it to do here? Okay, so first thing. Okay, so 0 less than x less than what? 2 pi, yeah? Okay, so first thing, what will be the reference angle? What will be the reference angle? Tangent equal to square root of 3. So the reference angle theta will be what? Square root of 3 is what? Pi over 3. Yeah? And the tangent is positive. Okay, tangent is positive. So which quadrant is this 2x in? It has to be in the what? First or third. Yeah? So what does this tell you? 2x will be equal to what? Pi over 3 plus what? K pi. Okay, so because the third is in what? The first and the third quadrant, so it can be 4 pi over 3. But for the tangent, because the period is only what? The period here is what? Only pi. So what could you do? You can even simplify here. So it's what? Plus pi over 3 plus what? N times pi. Plus n times pi. Okay, so you do not need to find the separate third quadrant angle anymore. The third quadrant angle anymore. Okay, so then what will be x? You have to divide by 2, so it will be pi over 6 plus what? N pi over 2. N pi over 2. Okay, so this is the general formula. And then, because you wanted the x between 0 and what? 2 pi. So what do you want to choose? You can choose n. You can choose n equal to 0, n equal to 1, n equal to maybe 2, and n equal to 3 even. Yeah, so to find all these values, when you do n equal to 4 is bigger than 2 pi, then you can stop. Okay, so for here, you have to be, be a little bit careful here, because for sine, and do you remember? So the period is what? 2 pi. So you will find what? 2 values here. For the tangent, the period is only pi, so so you can determine the quadrant, or you do not need to. So because it's plus n pi, it will be directly, you can directly use it. Okay, so this is this things. Okay, so then for the question like this, if you have a quadratic equation, so what will you do? So 4 cosine square u minus 3 is the same thing as you isolate the square. So you divide 3, and then cosine x equal to what? Do not forget what? Plus or minus. And then cosine x equal to what? Plus or minus square root of 3 over 2. When it's both plus or minus, what happened? It can be in which quadrant could it be in? In 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4 quadrant, yeah? So what will be the reference angle here? So the reference angle is theta is what? Square root of 3 over 2, that is what? Pi over 6. So then in quadrant 1, it will be the reference angle, yeah? Pi over 6. Quadrant 2, what will be the angle? It's always what? Pi minus the reference. It will be what? 5 pi over 6. In quadrant 3, so what it will be is pi plus the reference, no? In quadrant 4 is what? 2 pi minus the reference. Are you with me? So you have to remember, so what are the rules? Yeah, so 11 pi over 2 over 6, because here is what, pi over 6, and here this angle is pi over 6. Then we want to find this is what, pi minus reference. And then similarly you have here, you have here. So this is one angle, this is another angle, and this is another angle, this is another one. Yeah, but you all know that, you know, these things are, these small angles are pi over 6. Yeah, so you can, you know, this is where y you have pi minus reference for quadrant 2. Quadrant 3 you have pi plus reference. Quadrant 4 you have 2 pi minus reference. This is where these 4 angles come from. Okay, so this equation, sine x times tangent x equal sine x. A lot of students will be, sine cancelled. Okay, never do that in the solve the equation. What should you do? Okay, so because you do not know sine x equal to 0 or not, so what should you do? Move it on same side. Then you have sine x, then you factor it. Then if you have 2 factors multiplied together equal to 0, what do you get? So you can let each part equal to 0, sine x equal to 0, or tangent x minus 1 equal to 0. Yeah, so for sine x equal to 0, so x can be equal to 0 or pi. Tangent x equal to 1, what happens? So tangent x equal to 1, first bigger than 0. Yeah, so which quadrant it is? ASTC. So it's quadrant 1 or 3. Yeah, so the reference angle is pi over 4. No, with me? So in quadrant 1, it will be the reference angle pi over 4. And quadrant 3, it will be what? Pi plus the reference angle. This will be pi plus pi over 4 is what? 5 pi over 4. No, with me? So this is where these numbers come from. Okay. So the next one is using identity to solve a trigonometric equation, like cosine 2x and sine x plus sine x equal to 0. With me? So this is a little bit tricky, because cosine and sine, you can never add cosine with sine together. Are you with me? So what should we do? You wanted only keep cosine, or you only want to keep sine? Sine x you cannot change to cosine anymore, but cosine 2x you can. This means you can reuse the all sine formula for cosine 2x, 1 minus 2 sine squared plus sine x. And then, you know, you wanted to keep it positive. This means you multiply what? -1 on both sides. So you have 2 sine squared minus sine x minus 1 equals 0. Then, you know, you can factor it, and you get all these answers. So sine x equal to -1/2 and sine x equal to 1. You only have one solution between 0 and 2 pi. It is pi over 2. Okay, for sine x equal to -1/2, what should we do? Reference angle 1/2, it's always positive. Yeah, for the reference is what? Pi over 6. Quadrant negative sign. Negative sign is what? 3 or 4, because ASTC. So what happens here? In the third quadrant, it will be pi plus the reference. In the fourth quadrant is what? 2 pi minus the reference. You with me? Okay, so this is where you get all these numbers. This is where you get all these numbers. Okay, so this is solving with a calculator. What happens is what? You can use a calculator which is not a special value. X equal tangent inverse. Okay, so this is where you because tangent x is bigger than 0, it's always what? Quadrant 1, quadrant 3. And in quadrant 1, it is the reference angle. In quadrant 3 is pi plus the reference angle. This is your reference, yeah? Okay, so this is what you have here. Okay, so this is this. Okay, so this is what? Reference angle. Okay, reference angle is actually, when you find the reference angle, is here, I think they made a mistake. It's sine inverse what? Positive 0.2315. Okay, so because otherwise you have a negative sign here. So this is the reference angle, you have this. Then pi plus reference angle at 2 pi minus the reference angle. Okay, so they make a mistake here. Okay, so these two are what? Tricky one. Okay, but and all these questions you always wanted to find what? Reference angle, and also to find which quadrant they are in using the formula ASTC, yeah, or start trig class. Okay, so that's the